good day, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, live with Rabbi Chaim Coffman, all the way in Beitar Illit, Israel. And we're so excited that he continues to do this class with us because there's so much that we need to learn, and no better way to learn it than to learn the ethics of the fathers from a learned rabbi. I so enjoy the time spent with Rabbi Coffman. He does it with such flair. It's a joy, so I'm not going to beleaguer this point anymore. We're going to turn right over to Rabbi Coffman. How you doing today, and how's everybody in Israel?
Everyone's doing good, locked down like everybody else. So everyone praying at home. Or some people, on their balconies. Interesting, on their balconies, so people can sort of see each other. But for the most part, people at home, and that's what it is right now. So hopefully things will get better before they get worse, but probably will get worse before they get better. So, there's nothing else to do except, we're busy, running around preparing for Passover. So, it's always a lot of fun. They say nishtahir, meaning that, it's not, you have to turn over, like a few days before so you can cook for Passover. So you got everything all over the place. Everything's a mess and you can't walk in anything. So it's all part of the fun. Right. So as my kids will say, hey, you're not Pharaoh and I'm not a slave. And I'm like, I don't care. Keep cleaning. Keep working. That's it. That's what the holiday is all about. So we are still in the middle of the 10th Mishna, right?
Yes.
Chapter 1, we got a little bit carried away about fake rabbis and all that. I saw you saw my 8-minute rant against
From a few years ago.
Boca Raton and all that. We mentioned about having a missionary come to an Orthodox synagogue, which we absolutely blasted out of the ballpark. So anyone who wants to watch that video, we watched it last week. I was definitely in rare form, even without caffeine. So the 10th Mishnah, we'll just recapitulate. It says, Shmai and Naftalion received the tradition from them, from Shum ben Shetach, etc. And we mentioned Shmai and Naftalion were converts, right? So the whole question, that's how we got carried away also. If they're converts, how could they be part of the Beis Din, right? We spoke about that. We spoke about Yichus, about the pedigree and what the pedigree represents and all that. And we said, the Mishnah said, love work. We spoke about that. And, the idea about even if a person had enough money to live on, whether they have an obligation to work or sit and learn all day, especially for a Jew. And now we're going to get to despise lordliness and don't become overly familiar with the government. We're going to have a little fun with that also, I'm sure. So first question is, what does it mean to despise lordliness? Now, a person shouldn't think that, I'm so great, I'm God's gift to the world. One of my kids was in the States a few years ago, and she saw our t-shirt, she's in the place, whatever, she saw our t-shirt, she said, oh, this is definitely for you. It says, I'm awesome, don't make a big deal about it. So, it's obviously, working on my humility. So, every time I wear it, I try and, work on that a little bit. So a person shouldn't say, I'm such an important person, it's a disgrace for me to work, right? I should be doing, other things. Why should I work? Or there's a story, a guy would say, it's beneath me to take out the garbage, right? So one of the great Rosh Yeshivas, head of the yeshiva of Gifter, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, may his name be blessed, from Cleveland, showed up at this guy's door one morning, and this yeshiva student asked him, he says, Rosh Yeshiva, what are you doing here? He said, I heard that it's beneath you to take out the garbage, so I'm here. I'm here to show you that's not the case, and I'm here to take out the garbage. So the person obviously for him that was a hint, right? That's one possible explanation. A person shouldn't say it's a disgrace for me to work. It says in the ketubah, in the marriage document, right? A guy has certain things that he's obligated to his wife for, right? One of them is, right, got to take care of her, right? Parnasa, Right? He has to go make a living, right? So that's one of the, one of the obligations, and shouldn't say, well, why should I do that? I want to sit and learn. You go work or whatever. It's beneath me, right? But that is that's an obligation from the, from the marriage document itself. That's one explanation. Second explanation is that a person should distance himself from having power over the masses. Right? In other words, he's a person of position. Let's say he's he could be a CEO, a CFO, whatever, whatever it is. But he has to be careful. He has to be careful because the repercussions of showing you have the upper hand can be disastrous. How disastrous can that be, you may ask? It's one of the reasons Yosef dies before the brothers. Right? The rabbis tell us because he held power over them. Now, you have to dig a little bit deeper over here, see the story of Yosef and his brothers, that Yosef tells the dreams, over to his brothers, even though he knew that would create extra hatred. Now, why? And he put himself in danger, right? So why did he do that? So the commentaries explain he did that because the dreams that he had were a form of prophecy. So when they were a form of prophecy, even though he's putting his life in danger, if a prophet is given prophecy, even if it's dangerous to his life, God gives him the prophecy, he has to give it over to others. Right? He's got an obligation. Not only does he have an obligation to give it over to others, but he has to get the dream right. He has to get the prophecy right. If he doesn't get it right, and he gives over the wrong message, he's liable for a death penalty. All right? That is a pretty severe thing. So what does Yosef do in order to uphold the dream that he has, which we understand to be prophecy? So he goes this whole thing when the brothers come down to Egypt, and what do? And he says the whole thing, you're coming to steal, and this and that, all these different things. And he makes Yaakov's youngest son, Benjamin, come down, even though it's very difficult for Yaakov to send him. They all bow down to him, right? More than once. So question why he uses rough language, and he has to go through that. One of the reasons is he wanted to see the fulfillment of the dream. The fulfillment of the prophecy. Now, according to this, that's not necessarily such a good thing, right? Because it could be at his level. Again, you have to understand who he was. At his level, so he's held liable. He went beyond what he should have done. So therefore, he dies. He dies before the brothers. Right? Also, just, we'll backtrack a little bit. When he's in jail and he interprets the dreams of the baker and the wine steward while he's in jail, right? To the wine steward who lives, he tells him, don't forget about me. Right? Don't, tell Pharaoh I've been taken here against my will, and I don't have my own, I'm not amongst my own brethren, and, I'm taken out of my father's house, all these things. And he says, don't forget me. So what does the Torah say? So the Torah says, not only didn't he remember him, he also forgot him. Well, if he didn't remember him, the commentaries say, obviously that means he forgot him. Right? So what does it mean? Right? So what it means is that God made sure that this person forgot Yosef for 2 years. He made him stay in this pit for 2 years because he asked this person to remember me to Pharaoh. Now let's just remember, if we would have done that, that's putting our best foot forward. Because obviously, if someone's in jail, whatever, and someone can help you, so you put your best foot forward, and he asked them to help or whatever. But Joseph was on a much higher level. Since he's on a much higher level, then whatever he did was too much. In other words, his faith in God was so strong, he shouldn't have even done that. For everybody else in the world, that would have been a big thing. The fact that he did it was beyond, right? And therefore, he got punished. He got punished severely for a minor infraction. So that means, just as another side point, that means the greater the person, the more responsibility that they have. Mm-hmm. And therefore, even if they do something minor, they get, my language, they get slapped upside the head. Now, I had a friend of mine who would say, well, isn't it better to be ignorant? I said, well, if you're going to be ignorant and you have the ability to raise yourself to a higher spiritual level, isn't God going to zap you for that? So it's like you're killed on either side, right? If you have greater potential and you're an ignoramus, not good. But if you have that responsibility, you're already at a certain level. And you're lazy or whatever, and you don't reach that potential, whatever the case is, you're going to be held to a greater punishment because you know better, right? God's, when we look at what goes on in the world, we see that, the Jewish people get zapped here, get zapped there, all kinds of terrible things happen. So you say, well, look at these secular Jews. Look what they do. Look at the mixed multitude, the Erev Rav and the government here in Israel and what they do against ultra-Orthodox Jews and how they desecrate Shabbos and all these things. Is it their fault? They're going to be liable for sure. But these people don't know anything. They question the fact that, conversion here in the state of Israel, they say you got to make the exam easier, right? You can't make the exam so difficult. Why? What's so difficult? They ask questions like, who is Moshe Rabbeinu? What is the holiday of Passover about? These difficult questions. It's not like they're asking, okay, who did Doug Flutie play for in the CFL? Who's going to know that? Right? Who's going to? So I know because he went to Boston.
Buffalo.
Yeah, so I know he grew up in Boston, right? So he went to Boston College. Anyone who grew up in Boston knows, if you're that old, who he was, right? But to say the test is too hard, who was Moshe Rabbeinu? Who was David HaMelech? Who was King David? Come on, right? So God is going to punish them, right? They are definitely going to get punished, but they're only going to get punished because they don't know anything. If they're doing something on purpose and they don't know anything, okay, it's because they don't know anything, right? It depends how far it goes, but that's not the purpose. That's not the purpose of this discussion. So in any case, what is Yosef
about squandering potential, right? You're saying?
No, 100%. If at some point, when we get upstairs after 120 years, everyone's going to squander potential. Some level of potential, because nobody knows what their potential is, right? So I had a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds tell me, cut me some slack. I'm holding better than, most of world Jewry, 95% better, whatever. You have to cut me some slack. So I was talking about reaching potential. So someone said, well, if I keep kosher and I keep Shabbos, am I good? Then someone said, what if I hold by this rabbinical supervision of kashrus? Like, oh no, he's dead. So we don't know. Nobody knows what their potential is. Nobody knows 100%, what they're supposed to be doing in this world. I mean, we have an idea, but nonetheless, we have to do whatever we can, to do what God wants from us. Now, obviously, that's not easy. But whatever it is, we have to try and reach our potential to the best of our ability. Now, if we don't reach that potential, it's held against us, right? But there are a lot of different factors, involved. But I can tell you, according to Kabbalah, there are two movies that a person sees after they die. One movie is what they did in their life. In other words, when a person has an out-of-body experience, Jew or non-Jew, they all say the same thing. First thing is they saw their life flash before their eyes, right? They saw every action that they did, just like, we're recording. There are two angels record, whatever a person does. Just when you thought it was safe to read National Geographic in the bathroom, boom, they're there, right? They're there recording. So that's first thing. Second movie that you're going to see is what your potential was. In other words, why you had to go through certain things, what you did, what you didn't do, how you failed, maybe how you succeeded. And that is going to be part of the rectification process. Why is that? Because a person's a pure soul. When a person's a pure soul and they understand what's right and wrong, it's clear as day, right? They're not attached to the body. So if they're not attached to the body and things are clear as day, when a person got their hand stuck in the cookie jar, and they're still trying to give reasons why it's permissible, at the end of the day, you're not going to have an answer. Right? So part of that pain, now I don't know how a spiritual being shrugs their proverbial shoulders, but the embarrassment, I can't imagine, you can't imagine how great that is. So hell, in a certain way, yeah, you're going to feel, you're going to feel the pain, but part of feeling the pain is realizing what you did. I said, let me go back in the body. Well, can't go back in the body. Let me do more mitzvahs. I can't do more mitzvahs, right? I'm dead. Right? Or well, not me, somebody, somebody's dead or whatever. So that potential, unless you have kids going in the right direction, they can help you, or God forbid if they're going in the wrong direction, it's certainly bad for you. But either case, that pain, that embarrassment, that is part of the process, and it's not, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, because it helps, it helps the person, purge out those negative things they've done in this world. But at the same time, imagine acupuncture, and you're just getting like stung. You're getting stung by these needles, prick here, prick there. You're like, ow, ooh, ee, and you're seeing what the reality is, right? So, if a person goes beyond what they should do, right, even if they think it's the right thing to do, it could be held against them, right? And you see, Yosef dies before the brothers because he showed he had the upper hand. Now, even though he's the viceroy, he's second in command, right? He's second in command to the king. Okay, but as they say here in Israel, yesh gvul, there's a limit. There's a limit to what he could do and what he should do. Now, he thought in his own mind, because of what he went through and because of the dreams and the prophecy, he had a right to do that, right? He wanted to see these things fulfilled. And in the end, what happened was held against him, right? So that's a second explanation. Another explanation is, obviously, there's always a connection to what was said previously. And we said before, i.e. love work, right? We spoke about that, because it praises somebody who's lazy. And somebody who's lazy is going to end up in poverty. Why? Because they won't work, right? They won't do things to make money. They'll say, what do you mean? It's beneath me. Why should I do that? Well, if you have no choice, and this is what you have to do to put bread on the table, is what you have to do, right? But some people still say, okay, I'm still not going to do it. What's going to happen? They'll starve, right? They'll end up in poverty. That also means if a person has power over others, let's say, it doesn't mean a person can't be a boss of a company, right? It doesn't mean that. But what it means is you shouldn't enjoy it. You shouldn't derive benefit from it. You should run away from it like someone who hates taking bitter medicine. Now, again, we're going to tell somebody not to be, not to be president of a company, not to start their own company or whatever. It says you got to be careful, right? According to this Mishna, the point is that you have to be extremely careful, because even though it's permissible, you have to be extremely careful not to derive benefit from it, not to enjoy it. Why? Because then you're going to think, oh, I'm better than this person. I can do this. I have this power. I could do whatever, fire them, who knows what, enjoy it, and that's a problem, right? A person has to be, has to really guard themselves against that. There's a great story with Rabbi Akiva Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, one of the great rabbis, more than 100 years ago, where he had such humility, it brought him to hate having power. Right? Now, he was a big rabbi, and he said, I look at having this type of power like a bitter death. Right? Why should someone want to have power over others? So he says, for me, it'd be better to sweep a synagogue or guard it at night to make a living so I can learn during the day. In other words, if he'd be a rabbi of a synagogue or have some other position, which would give him power, what was he worried about? He's worried about what it's going to do to him, right? It's worried about his ability to have power over others. And when you have power over others, you can be haughty. You can be conceited. you can think you're God's gift to the world. So he said, better I sweep a synagogue, right? Which I wouldn't say it's probably the top 10, things a person would want to do to make a living, right? Or a partial living or whatever, right? So he'd rather do that, says Rabbi Akiva Eger, than have a place of position. And when you have a place of position, in the end, it could kill you because you have to be extremely careful. All right, so that's what it means. That's what it means over here, that you should despise lordliness. Now, again, that is it's a catch-22. Because then a person would say, well, if I start my own company and I have people working underneath me or whatever, why should that be an issue? Right? And the answer is, as long as you do it right, that shouldn't be an issue. We're just pointing out the trap that a person could definitely fall in. So it doesn't mean a person will, but again, having that type of power, a person can enjoy it. Right? Haman, Mr. Haman himself in the book of Esther, was an egomaniac, absolute egomaniac. So there was this idolatry where he'd walk into a room and the obligation for everybody was to get on the floor, right? Bow down to him on the floor. Right? It was this like Haman worshiping thing, and the only person who wouldn't bow was none other than Mordecai, because obviously he held it was forbidden to do, because it was like idolatry. And with all the money, with all the wealth that Mr. Haman had, this bothered him to no end. Not only did he want to kill Mordecai, but he wanted to kill his entire people. Right? So that's ego. Right? That's ego, and ego eventually killed him. Right? It was the beginning of his downfall. So again, that's what it means, having power over others. Now, the last part of the Mishnah says, don't be too familiar with the government. Now, why is it sort of a juicy thing? Because you think a person who's close to the government, right? What's it going to be? So you're going to be close to the government. Also, it's an idea of having power, because you're close to the king. You're close to the one in charge. So what happens? You take off the yoke, or let's say better, you take on the yoke of the king, i.e. the government, the rules, you're a boss, and you throw off the yoke of the King of Kings. Right? In other words, you're close to the government, can't do anything wrong because you're friends with the king. You're friends with the boss. Now, don't you understand it could be
diplomatic immunity.
Yeah, right. Remember that, I forget what movie it was. I'll think of it probably in the middle of prayer. Whatever, but there was
Sorry, Rabbi.
a Lethal Weapon. There was a Lethal Weapon movie that they got this guy on charge or whatever, and he had this badge, and he says diplomatic immunity. And Daniel Glover looks at him, and shoots him. Right, in the end, he just shoots him. But, yeah, that's it. So when it comes to that, isn't it true though? Just thinking out loud here, isn't it true that it could be that boss could be taken out of power? Now, if you're attached to the boss and you're attached to the king, we'll say by king is better, right? If you're attached to the king can get overthrown, right? There could be other elements want to overthrow it, or if he's a dictator or whatever. So you also got to be careful, because if you're in cahoots with the king, with the one in power, what happens when that person gets taken out of power? Now, if that person gets taken out of power, you go down with it. Unless you figure out how to flee and don't get caught, right? But you'll say, it's not going to happen. Whatever the case is. So therefore, what's going to happen? You are going to throw off the yoke of heaven, and you're not going to keep Torah mitzvahs, because essentially he's going to be in such trepidation of his job and all that entails. So therefore, he's going to obviously go beyond what he's supposed to do and absolutely find favor with this person, right? With the king, with the boss, whatever. He'll do whatever it takes to please the boss, but the end results could be catastrophic. Why? Because the closer you are to the king, the easier it is to have your head chopped off, right? In other words, if somebody, you have a lot of movable parts in a kingship, right? Everyone has to do the right thing. Everyone has their job, right? And their job put together, is going to run, it's going to run the kingdom, right? Just like, let's say, on a baseball field, the football field, whatever it is, everyone's got their job, and each one has to function what they do. And obviously, if someone doesn't function well, or a bunch of people don't function well, the whole thing goes to pot, right? And they don't win. I'm going to say cheat, like us, like, whatever. Any case, if you're close to the king, imagine, let's say someone's a mail carrier, right? He also has a function. Now, if the mail carrier makes a mistake, he delivers the mail to the wrong person. I know he does something wrong, not necessarily so egregious. He does something wrong, right? And the bigger scale of things, is the king really going to care? He's a mail carrier. Who cares? Okay, he made a mistake. Whatever. If he didn't bring someone's big check to them, or whatever the case is, and he lost it, okay, there'll be more repercussions. But if he's a mail carrier, he's a low man on the totem pole, right? No pun intended. Someone who's vice president, someone who's like very close to the king, if he does something, it doesn't necessarily have to be so egregious. If he himself does something, what's the punishment? Punishment is much more severe. Why? Because the king trusts him. He's part of his inner circle. He does something wrong. He's not some nobody, right? He's somebody that the king trusts. And if you go against that trust, what's going to happen? The king is going to say, you look a little bit more, you'll be a little bit better, without a head, right? So you're playing with fire. Because essentially you can have all the benefits being close to the king. I mean, this works like that in the mafia for sure, right? The closer you are to the kingpin, you mess up or whatever, that's it, right? I don't know how many chances, not that I know that much about the mafia, right? But I don't know how many chances the person's going to get. You mess up, it's over, right? Because obviously you have that, you have that connection. Comes along the Rambam. The Rambam learns that you shouldn't rely on the government to fulfill your needs. And if a person does, what's going to happen? You're going to lose your faith in God. Because when you rely on the government,
wow,
so to speak, what are you saying? You're saying, I don't need God. I heard a great rabbi once say that, there are Jews, Orthodox Jews that can be lax and they're observant or whatever. They say, listen, I got a Jewish senator. Right? I got an Orthodox senator. I got an Orthodox congressman. I got an Orthodox whoever, that's part of the council, part of the government, whatever. So what happens? I got them. I don't have to pray as hard. Right? So therefore they can lose their trust and faith of God, says the Rambam, because you rely on the government. And the government is everything. Right? Now, if you look a little bit back in history, as people say, they're so happy to be in America, the Golden of Medina, right, as it's called, right? During the war, World War II, they did everything to stay out of the war. Absolutely everything to stay out of the war. Comes the bombing of Pearl Harbor. They had no choice, right? They certainly had no choice. They got involved in the war. But keep in mind, there were boats. Boats of refugees came to America from Europe. And what did they do? Send them back. I sent them back.
That's your field of study, isn't it, Rabbi? You went to
That's
university.
what I studied. They, clear as day, they sent them back. There were quotas. There were this. They could have saved them. They sent them back. They, obviously, what was going to happen to them? They died. Right? Pretty clear. So you're going to say, well, they didn't want to get involved. They wanted to stay neutral. But it's such an open place. How could you stay neutral? The state of Israel, same thing. They could have ransomed off millions to save Jews. The Eichmann himself. And they didn't want. Why not? Because they didn't want these Orthodox Jews coming to Israel. They said, we're the new Israel. No Torah, no nothing. We don't want this old world. So they said, we'll sacrifice these, out of date Jews. We'll allow them to languish in Europe. They could have ransomed them. Clear as day, right? Not something's being made up. Something's been totally proven, right? They could have ransomed them. They didn't, and they absolutely didn't.
Even here in
So
Canada, Rabbi, even here in Canada, we turned back some boats. It's sad, but we followed the Americans' lead, and
no,
I
100%. But people say, oh, it's the greatest place. Yeah, it is. It is. When it comes to non-persecution, that's the whole point that the United States was founded, right? They wanted to go, get away from church and state and all that, and therefore have free expression, of religion, but at the same time they can say, well, we can't fight everyone's wars. Well, that's also true, but they had no interest, even with all the Jews that went to the president at the time, and got them just to try to get them to bomb the railways so they wouldn't at least be able to take more Jews to their deaths. Wouldn't even do that, right? They did not want to get involved, right? But they had no choice. So as free as it is, and as great as it is, yeah, you see, like everyone else, they have their faults, and they have death on their hands, they have blood on their hands, no question. I'm just talking about Jews. I'm certainly other places also, but whatever, not the point for now. But the point is, if you put your faith in man, all right, that's what you learn from the Holocaust. People ask this question, where's God during the Holocaust? Right? What's the answer? Well, he's where he always was. What's the question? Why did God kill 6 million Jews? Well, it takes a lot of people to kill 6 million Jews. There were the Latvians, there were the Croatians, there were the Hungarians, there were the Germans, there were the Russians. Right? It took the Poles. I don't want to forget the Poles. Right? It took the Polish people, also killed tens of thousands, millions. Right? So the question is not where God was. The question is where man was. Bloodiest century in the history of man, the 20th century. Right? And obviously, according to the Germans and others, they didn't disagree. Right? Was the fact that you have to understand the Germans were the most sophisticated of that time. Right? They were they were the brains of the world. America became that like 40 years later or whatever. And who were the first people to join the Third Reich? They were the doctors, the lawyers, the academics. They weren't neo-Nazis like today, not these skinheads, right? These were the cream of the crop. And they understood. No one put a gun to their heads. A great book out there. It's called Hitler's Willing Executioners. You didn't put guns to people's heads and say, if you do this, you're going to die, right? But they believed in the cause. Right? They absolutely believed in the cause. So the question isn't where was God? The question is where was man? Where was the humanity to man? Right? The Germans certainly believed treating your dog better than treating a Jew. Right? Now, obviously, it's a divine decree. Right? Everyone will agree it's a divine decree, but God has all his messengers. Right? As it says in the Ramchal and Derech Hashem, in the way of God, God uses people, other things, as his messengers. Instead of doing things himself, right? He's got his messengers. But that being the case, so where's your faith in man? Right? And that what is one of the things you learn from the Holocaust is the fact that you can never, ever rely on men. If you're a Jew, there's nothing to talk about because you are going to get sold out. You will get crushed. That's what Jewish history shows. So therefore, man helps you with one thing. But in the end of the day, they're also puppets. At the end of the day, you only have God himself. God himself is going to take the Jewish people. You have to have that faith in God. Relying on man, we see what happens. Right? We see exactly what happens. It comes on the Rambam, and the Rambam says, you rely on the government, you rely on man, that means you don't rely on God. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just want to ask, Rabbi, because we see with this coronavirus, this COVID-19 virus out there, we see a lot of government subsidies going on out there. Some by necessity, we understand, but
Right.
what we see is this huge outcry, especially from those on the liberal side, just expecting a load of freebies. More than that, just looking to the government to support them like an infant bird, feed me, feed me, feed me. I just see that this scenario is ripe for the going off the deep end with this.
Well, it makes sense in one way, in the fact that, in most places, if not all places, things have shut down. Everything is shut down. Now, here in Israel, so as of last week, they're only allowed to have 30% of the workforce at work. They just brought that down to 15%. So 15% of your workers, that means that 85% are out of a job, right? That means right now in this country you have 30%, more than 30% are jobless, right? Or they're let go without pay. Same thing, right? They also have to come up with money, but I do agree they have to come up with something, because they're the ones shutting everything down to stop it, right? I'm not saying they're going to pay everyone's regular salary and all that, right? But it's going to take a while for the economy to come back, and eventually once people start getting back to work and things start to move, okay. But they shut everything down. If they shut everything down, they can't say, "Well, you're tough luck." Forget about what type of system you have or whatever you believe in. They have an obligation to help. Now the only question is how much. I mean, they put everyone out of work. Now you're going to say, "Well, it's because of the virus." They don't want anyone being too close to each other. And then you have tens of thousands of people have it. The hospitals can't handle it. We already see the hospitals can't handle it.
In New
right?
York,
And they're deciding, and the craziness is they're deciding who's going to live or die. Somebody 60 years old on a ventilator. I just read an article earlier, and they're having to say, well, we put this one on a ventilator, he's not going to make it. You got to let him go. They're deciding who's going to live and who's going to die. Right? That in of itself is a scary,
it's triage.
Yeah, it's a scary situation, right? But I certainly believe that, they have an obligation to help, right? They have to allocate money to help people that basically lost their shirts right now. Forget about the stock market. I'm talking about businesses. Businesses that have to shut down. They're finished.
But we shouldn't be reliant, is what you're saying, though, is what this Mishna is saying, that we shouldn't be reliant on them.
Right. You shouldn't be relying on them in general, right? But at something like this, they certainly have to help, right? If the government would come out and say, we're not going to help anybody, and it's your tough luck, we're just doing what we need to do in order to to make sure this virus doesn't kill more people, they could say that. They could say, well, it's gonna, so America will be, $1.5 trillion, deficit, or whatever the case is. They could say that we don't want to go that far. So what does that mean? They'll be like the Chinese and like the Iranians. They didn't tell anybody about it. They put this thing open to their own people, killed their own people. So they'll be murderers also. Right? They'll be murderers in other ways. Right? They can't, they don't want to have that. Because then they'll say, oh, it's a dictatorship. You're only thinking about yourself. You don't care if anyone dies or not. And these people are going to go nuts. People lost their shirts overnight. You don't think there's going to be a high suicide rate? For sure it's going to be a high suicide rate. People don't know what to do. They can't pay them. They can't pay their workers. They have all this stock. They can't do anything. What are they supposed to do? They've never been in this situation before. And the government says, well, we're shutting everyone down and we're not going to help. I think there would be an absolute outcry.
I guess, forgive me, Rabbi. You were on such a great spiel about from this Mishna about not being reliant on the government, and I think we need to have that right attitude to turn this around when the wave is past, right?
No, 100%. Once the wave is past, okay, right? You don't want to rely. You don't want to rely on the government. There's a famous story with the Brisker Rav Yisrael Zev Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzadik Livrocho, son of Rav Chaim Brisker, one of the Torah giants of the last generation, that one of the people in the government wanted to speak to him. And every time this person came, he kept pushing him off. And finally, someone very close to the Brisker Rav asked him, like, why don't you speak to him? This guy's driving us nuts. He really wants to speak to him. Just speak to him. Give him 5 minutes. Brisker Rav said, read this Mishnah. He said, read this Mishnah. This is what the Mishnah says. Mishnah says you have no contact with them because you never ever want to be behooven, right, to someone, in the government. And this is what the Mishnah says. I guess the last thing about this Mishnah is that there's no such thing as a government that has quote unquote power, but really everything in this world. Now, this is a much bigger discussion, and that is everything in this world is either working towards serving God or not. Right? There's no such thing. I spoke to someone last week, about this, and there's no such thing as being mediocre. You know about going to a job interview, right? You're going to say, oh, what are your good qualities? Well, I don't really have so many. I'm just a mediocre guy. I mean, I'm tall, 6'5", good, but, I don't have like the greatest skills. I'm an average guy, average this, average that. What's the recruiter going to tell you? Hasta la vista. They're like, next,
Baby.
right? So either, I mean, not you, obviously, you still have all that hair or whatever, but even so, I digress. But even so, when we look at this world, there are either people doing the right thing, they're either serving God or not. Now, the Rambam in the 13 Principles of Faith, at the very beginning, it's every Jew has to believe in. Unless they repent, they're not called a Jew anymore. Their basic beliefs in God, how God runs the world, prophecy, reward and punishment, resurrection, coming to the Messiah. The first of the 13 principles is that God is absolute. In other words, there is no such thing as moral relativism. There's a famous mashal, the famous parable with the Dubna Maggid. It was a few hundred years ago, more than a few hundred years ago. And Dubna Maggid gave a parable. The parable was a king walking in the forest, and he sees arrows shot in trees in a bullseye. He's like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. He says, I got to get this marksman to teach my men how to shoot. So he searches. Finally, he finds his quote-unquote marksman. He says, this is great. I said, you're the one who shot all these arrows into these bullseyes? So he said, yeah. I said, you can teach my men how to shoot? And he said, yeah, it's very easy. He said, I take my bow and arrow, and I shoot it in the air. And he said, when it hits a tree, I draw a bullseye around it. Right? So that bullseye in the parable, that bullseye is what we call morality. Right? Now, morality changes. Why does it change? It changes because people say it's going to change. The mores are going to change. Now, I'll give an example. I'm not, we're about the same age. I'm not, right, we're not that old. Right? So I remember I mean, I'm not 6'7", but I had an afro once, so I was almost 6'2". But in any case, when I was growing up, what was like one of the crazier things guys would do is I knew somebody in my high school class, had a rat tail, right? You know what a rat tail is? It's like, a hair that they grow longer, right? And they put it into a braid or whatever.
Now they got the man bun.
Yeah, right. Or somebody, let's say, wore an earring. That was like, okay, people did drugs, whatever, but that was like a huge thing, right? So now you advance. Let's say 30 years, 40 years. Or what's the difference? That's not 35 years, let's say. Like, what's the difference going on today? Today, even at a younger age, people are going to be thrown at them. How do you know you are of the sex that you were born? Right? In other words, even at a very young age, maybe it's a boy, maybe it should be a girl. Maybe it's a girl, you should be a boy. And they got these books out there. Johnny has 2 fathers. Betsy has 2 mothers. Whatever. That's an absolutely crazy thing. And today, obviously, you got to be open-minded until your brains fall on the floor. That's the norm. Now, if you would tell my parents, my parents' generation, in their generation, like holding hands outside was like you get crucified. Now, obviously, things went on behind, closed doors. But what became, quote unquote, the norm for them, or what became forbidden for them, that in their kids' generation became the norm, and then the parents, what would the parents say? Okay, I guess this is the norm. So things have changed, but what changed? What mores changed? People decided it should change, right? When did people stop wearing hats, for example? Right? I don't know if you're aware of this. People stopped wearing ascots and wearing hats when John F. Kennedy, a Bostonian nonetheless, right? John F. Kennedy took off his hat. That's when the vast majority of people stopped wearing hats. Now, why do they have to go according to what he does and whatever? Okay, whatever, whatever the reason is, right? But so I digress a little bit. The Rambam at the beginning, so that's about moral relativism and how things change, because everything, quote unquote, is relative. Now, if it's relative, that means it changes. If it changes, that means it's not absolute. Right? Someone once told me, someone ever asked you this question, this is how you can answer it. Someone said, I don't believe, in right and wrong. Right? There are no absolutes. So I said, if I take a gun and shoot someone's head off, it's like, no, that's different. Come on, don't be so fanatical, whatever. I said, okay, you don't believe in absolutes. I said, are you sure? They said, yeah. I said, are you sure you're sure? They said, yes. I said, are you absolutely sure? And they said, yes. No absolutes. Right? So if you believe in moral relativism, that means there are no right and wrong. That means what's right, what's wrong years ago becomes right today. Another example would be, God forbid, today's day, right? Someone's on a respirator. So you make the decision, or someone makes the decision, they shouldn't suffer anymore, you pull the plug. Right? Now, pulling the plug when it's forbidden is murder. Right? We definitely hold euthanasia, is murder. Now, some will say, but they're suffering. So we have no idea what's going on when that person's on that respirator. I'll tell you a scary story just to show how this is a totally upside down world. There was a story, because I heard from the person himself, who eventually became an Orthodox Jew. He was a doctor. He himself was a doctor. And there was a patient of his on a respirator. And the family decided they're suffering too much, pull the plug. So he pulls the plug. And obviously what happened? The patient died. Now the patient comes back to him in a dream. And he said, you're a murderer. You killed me. I was just waiting a few more days. I could have gone straight to Olam Haba, straight to the next world, in the Garden of Eden and paradise. You killed me, you murderer. Now I'm suffering. And this person woke up in an absolute sweat, which we all would. And didn't know what to do. And he had to say, and he had to dream again. He said, I'm suffering because of you. Look what you did. Scared the absolute dickens out of this guy. Now, this guy eventually became an Orthodox Jew through this whole thing. But we think someone sitting on a respirator, they can't hear, they can't speak. And even if they come out of it, the doctors say probably be a vegetable, right? Whatever the case is, but you have no idea. You have no idea what's going on. There was a story of a young kid that was in a terrible car accident, and also on a respirator, and he was on a respirator for a long time. And every so often, he would hear his parents say, we don't know what to do. Maybe we should just, pull the plug. And this kid is screaming. Obviously, no one could hear him. He's like, no, don't kill me. Don't kill me. He could hear everything. He could understand everything. But he couldn't speak. And he wasn't conscious. So how do I know? Because he came out of it. He came out of it and survived. So what we look at and what we see is not what meets the eye. That could be a person suffers in this world, right, in order that they're going to be squeaky clean in the next, meaning that they won't have to suffer as much, which is a tremendous thing. So a person will say, wow, Rabbi, you're telling me, I should suffer in this world and I should like it? Well, considering what we know about the next world, so to speak, or what goes on there. So it's certainly better for a person to suffer now than suffer later. All right, we can imagine, we spoke before about what the suffering is, in that world. But the Rambam, back to this Rambam, the Rambam says that God is absolute. God is absolute means he doesn't change. He's not fickle. He doesn't go according to the times. He doesn't care about the times. Right? What he says goes. It's for all generations. So therefore, says the Rambam, either you're going in the way of God or you're going in the way of idols. In other words, or you're serving yourself, which is akin to idolatry as well. Right? You have to serve something. Right? Whether it's sports, whether it's entertainment, whether it's desire, whatever it is, a person is either going to serve other idols or will take those idols and make them something else. Right? We'll just intertwine them, whatever they may be. Now again, sports, money, whatever, you gotta say, what? I bow down and worship it? No. But what a person does is they make it so strong. Right? They give it such chashiva, such importance, that's as if that they idol worship. And again,
it changes their thinking.
No, for sure. What
I've seen some people, they get so involved in one thing, they're so pro one thing, they don't realize how it alters their thinking away from.
No, that's right. That's for sure, and they can't look at it any other way. People say about about Bible thumpers. Oh, they've just been brainwashed. They're not taught how to think, right? They're only you can only do what your rabbi tells you. You can only do this, do that. But it's not a question. It's not a question whether it's true, right? They're not asking that question. They're just making fun of it. Say, okay, I got 10 proofs that the Torah can absolutely be proven that's written by God. Cannot be written by a human. They're not even going to take the time, most people, to listen. They're not interested. They are not interested in hearing if it's true or not. Well, where's your open-mindedness? You're telling me I believe and I have faith and I believe, right? So great. Torah's about knowledge, right? Torah's about belief with knowledge. So, okay, if I can show you 10 proofs, so let's see if these proofs, according to you, stand up. They won't even engage in the conversation. Why not? Because what happens if you prove them wrong, right? I had somebody tell me many years ago, if I look into Judaism and I find out it's true, I'm not willing to change. So that person was honest, right? But most people, when it comes to religion, you can't even open up your mouth because you've been brainwashed. Okay, let's see if it's true. Does this make sense to you? Or not? That's the issue. So if you're not serving God, what are you serving? Why do you get up in the morning? Say, what? I got to go to work. If I have work, because it's going to put food on the table. Okay, but isn't there, more to life than just work? Well, I have kids. I enjoy my kids. Wasn't there, and if you didn't have kids, you wouldn't get up in the morning. Like anything they're going to throw out at you is not the single reason what makes someone tick. Right? What makes someone tick and give meaning is the fact they have a connection to their creator. Having a connection to hobbies, sports, whatever, having a connection to that's not real. I'm not saying it's nothing, right? But it's not the real world. Because even though people have to work and they have to make money and all, and all these things, that's not what they're created for. They have to do that. It's part of the whole system. Right? But, it's like a circular argument. You say, why do you have to do good in high school? So I go to a good college. Why do you have to do in good college? Why do you have to go to a good college or go to college so I can get a job? Right? So what do you need? What do you need to get a job for? So I can eat. So what do you need to eat for? No, that's why I need to get a job. That's why I need to go to school. It's like it's a total circular argument, but it has no meaning. Right? All these things are true. It's 100% true, but that's not what the purpose of life is. The purpose of life is not to have a 9-to-5 job. That's something you have to do to put bread on the table, maybe, right? But it's not what I'm obligated, I'm obligated in life for. I'm obligated because of what I do, what my actions represent. If I hurt somebody, I don't hurt somebody. And how do I know? Because there are values, right? There are values that are eternal. How do I know they're eternal? Because the Torah tells me. And if you're a non-Jew, and you're a Noahide or super Noahide or whatever you want to call yourself, you have to keep what's universal according to the Torah. So you can't get upstairs after 120 years, mentioned this many times, and think, God, I didn't know. What do you mean you didn't know about the Noahide laws? Didn't you see Coffman's videos? Didn't you watch him? How did you not know? Right? You're going to say, I was on YouTube that day. I'm not on his Facebook page. How would I know? So you're going to say, well, don't you know? You're not allowed to kill. You're not allowed to murder. You're not allowed to steal. No, that's different. That's only the IRS. That's only this. But it's universal. But I was never taught I have to be close to God. This is universal, stupid. This is what you're obligated to do. This is what I set out the world for. For a Jew, it's a little more complicated because he's got a lot more to keep than a non-Jew. He's also got to keep what's universal, right? But he's got, he's got thousands of other, other mitzvahs to keep. But that being said, so who am I really serving? What am I really serving, right? So if you break it down, either you're serving another idol or something like another idol, or you're serving yourself. And if you're serving yourself, i.e., there'll be people that'll say, I'm just out for a good time. I'm out to enjoy. That's what I'm going to do in this life because it's so hard. Then what's the idol? The idol is yourself. I'm serving my body. I'm serving what I need. And I'll take it from wherever it comes, okay? There are certain things I won't do because they're against the law. And I don't want to get caught, right? And there are certain things that I probably shouldn't do and I know that are wrong to do. Okay. So what's going to stop a person from doing one thing or another? It's whatever their mind tells them. Whatever their heart tells them. Someone once told me they were in university at the time, and they said, how can it be? How can it be? You have all these restrictive laws. All these things you can't do on the Sabbath or a festival and this and that. And you have all the restrictive laws. And I can do whatever I want. And I'm 10 times more miserable than you are. So I said, yeah, it kills you, doesn't it? I was like, nah. I was like, it must destroy you. So I said, the reason is as free as you are. And as much as you say, I don't have to listen to what other people say or do, you are stuck in that rat race. In other words, you are stuck because, wow, this person's doing this person's doing something else. You say, I'll cut out my own path, right, up to a limit. Because obviously you want to fit, you're not going to be so, anti-establishment that you're going to just like go off in your own island and, and do whatever. That you're not going to do. But I said that means your free will, your free will is limited because you see what goes on. You're brainwashed by your society. So I said, you can say I'm brainwashed by God. Okay? Brainwashed by what the Torah says. That's good. Hopefully I live up to that. Hopefully my brain got squished around enough that I can do that. Right? But at the end of the day, why is it more meaning? You say, well, there's some people that need more structure, that from beginning of the day to the end of the day, they have what to do and, they're going in a certain path, either the right way or the wrong way. Yeah, but it has meaning. You can say, but you've never met anyone who's been in the next world and come back. That's true. Right? So then what does it get in discussion of how do you know it's true? Maybe it's all make-believe. Maybe the Jews ate the same hallucinogenic mushroom in the desert. Maybe all the plagues happened, in Egypt because Saturn was out of orbit. Don't think that's not an excuse that some people may use. Regardless what makes people tick, right? That is really the bigger question. What gets them out of bed, right? And most people today, unfortunately, are on Prozac, right? They're depressed because life is depressing. It means they have no meaning. And it doesn't matter how free their life is and how open and, as I said, they're open-minded to the brains fall on the floor. They can be Democrats, they can be liberals, they can save the whales, all the PETA activists, whatever, save the animals, great. So what? That's what you get up in the morning for. That's what life is. You have to get more basic than that, right? That might be one aspect. Doing all these things, okay. I have to do this, to do that, to do the other thing. That's all true, right? That's all true, but is that what meaning is? Right? How do I know anything is good or bad? Right? So someone says, the cardiac Jew, I'm a Jew at heart. Right? I do what my heart tells me. What? So you eat gefilte fish. Very good. You have a little bit of matzah on Passover. That's what your heart tells you. right? But, being a cardiac Jew just means I do whatever I want. And doing whatever you want does not mean you have meaning, right? It's very hard, even if a person does the right thing and is going in the right direction, you can get lulled to sleep also, in this world. What the Rambam says at the beginning, in the laws of repentance, he says, why do you have to hear the shofar every day in the month of Elul before Yom Kippur, except on Shabbos? It's in order to wake you up because the rest of the year you're asleep. How could I be asleep? I'm busy cleaning for Passover. How could I be asleep? I'm learning about Emunah, right? I'm learning about proper faith in God and during these times and all this. I'm preparing the Haggadah. I'm doing these things. How could I be asleep? Because you're not living it the way it should be. You could be going through the motions. The person could get upstairs and find out God says, well, you didn't really pray that much during your life. So what do you mean? 40 years. I prayed 3 times a day. On Shabbos and on festivals. Yeah, let's, as one of the great sportscasters in America would say, let's go to the videotape, right? Go to the videotape. God plays it and says, where was your mind? Where was your mind in synagogue? Where was it? Let's see where your mind was. You were thinking about the stock market. You were thinking about this. You were thinking about what this person did to you. You were, oh, by the way, you started thinking about me too. God's like, woohoo! You started thinking about me. Right? So a person, we have to work on ourselves, on a daily basis of trying to do the right thing when times are easy, when times are hard. It doesn't matter. But a person can do things by rote, which is akin to spiritual death. And a person can do things, get upstairs and say, yeah, you get credit for this, but boy, you got a C minus. You got a C minus. Someone asked my wife once, a cousin of hers went to a Jewish school, and they said, how could they ever give us a grade on prayer? Right? We pray every day, in school. How could they give us a grade on that? It's a good question. Right? A kid asking a very good question. Right? The thing is that we're going to get graded upstairs. We're going to get graded how we prayed, what we did, our interactions between, man and man. Forget about man and God, that's different. Right? But between man and man, did I hoard eggs? Did I absolutely hoard eggs when there are no eggs? That's, part of the reason there's an egg shortage. Because people were, desperate and they hoarded eggs. Whatever. How they cut someone in line, take someone's parking spot, road rage, won't even get into that, right? But you're going to get upstairs, God, these are basic things, right? I'm not talking about high spiritual levels here. And a person cuts someone off, they drive like a maniac, right? Like some people can, right? Who gives you the right to put other people's lives in danger? You say, well, my life comes first. Yeah, but who says you can drive like a maniac? Right? Not only that, people outside go against the curfew and whatever. You can put people's lives in danger. That's, you got the status of someone who was a killer, potential killer. Right? So there are a lot of things that are practical, that are very practical that we can see in our own lives. I always say, like, if you go to the supermarket, like, working on your character traits is always, especially during this time, because first of all, they're not allowing so many people in. And even when they do, at time Passover, it's crazy. People have all these carts and, stocking up on food and, whatever. And, it's absolute chaos. Now, it can be chaos in general where people just aren't careful, bang into you, they don't say anything. They pass you, they're like, no, like move to the side, they want to get by. So it's always, it's a good thing, to work on your, character traits. Now, you're going to tell me, come on, why are you telling me this? This is obvious. This is like the ABCs of how to properly interact. I agree. Right? The Ramchal in Path of the Just, or Moshe Chaim Mutato Zecher Tzadik, the Racham Path of the Just, in the very beginning, his introduction says, I am not telling you anything new. I'm just rehashing things that everybody already knows. Right? So I'm very good at embellishing ideas, but these are simple ideas. These are not like, we're reaching Kabbalistic levels. Right? They're talking to the nations. We're reaching Kabbalistic levels. Forget about Kabbalistic levels. right? There was a story I just read today, and my Rabbi said that by the Brisker Rav we mentioned before, Rabbi Lev Soloveitchik, when he had someone blow shofar, in his synagogue, he told the person, he said, I want, when you blow the shofar, I don't want any Kabbalistic intention. I don't want you thinking about anything else except one thing. The only thing I want you to think about when you're blowing the shofar is the fact that God commanded you to do it. That's it. I don't want any highfalutin, now this is my language, any highfalutin intention or any of these things. You are going, I want you to blow, and I want you to have intention, very simple intention. This is my obligation because God commanded me to blow the shofar. That's it, right? So anything we do today, right? We saw before in Pirkei Avos, we saw that the highest level is to serve God without getting any reward, right? So the purpose is, even if someone told me when I die, go 6 feet under, and I told him, I hope for your sake you're right, because if I'm right, you're in big trouble. And even so, he said, what happens if you find out it's not true? So I said, God forbid that's the case. But find me a better solution, a better way of life that makes you a more individual. It makes you a more moral individual. I heard a great rabbi once say, university can learn a lot of things. It's like I heard of Victor Miller, may his name be blessed, one of the Torah giants of the last generation. He said you can learn a lot in university, like narcotics. He said, like, you can learn about women and booze, right? Okay. So this other rabbi said, you go to university, let me see if someone became a more moral individual, after they come out. He said, if it would make a person a more moral individual, we can have a discussion. If it doesn't make a moral individual, it's going to be worse coming out than when you went in, then obviously there's a problem, right? So, so even if there is going to be, God forbid, no reward, right? What am I living for, right? Torah tells me what my obligation is. So even if you're going to say, well, God forbid it didn't exist, it didn't happen, and it's not going to happen, is there anything more moral and more beautiful than doing what God commands? I'm going to say it's hard, there are different levels of this. Fine, there are a lot of issues, right? But the Brisker Rav said, what is the person doing in this world? You're serving God because that is your obligation, right? We're going to see later in Pirkei Avos, right? One day in the next millennium, we'll get there. And it says that, sure, as we see, we're going very far here, right? The idea being that you want to get reward for all the mitzvahs you do in this world. So God says, what are you talking about reward? You got this wisdom. You know why? Because that's what you're created to do. Because you're supposed to learn, right? So you get reward, comes on the Chovos Levavos, says in duties of the heart. He says, why does God give you reward? You don't deserve it, right? Chump don't deserve it, my language. Why not? Because that's what you're born to do. You are born to learn, right? You were born to learn God's ways and do exactly what he wants. And you want rewards? You want a hoodsie? In my language, hoodsie, anyone doesn't know. Grew up in Boston. There was like a small cup, like a Dixie cup, that had half vanilla ice cream, half chocolate. And you would eat it with like a wooden spoon. Now, why did they call it a hoodsie? Because the company who made it was Hood, right? So in my language, I told this story once. One of my classes, a few people from Boston actually knew what it was, so got a nice chuckle out of it. In any case, you're going to say, hey, where's my hoodsie? Why don't I get a hoodsie? God's going to say, what are you talking about? This is exactly what you're created to do. So says the Chovos Levavos, and duties of the heart. Why do you get reward? What is the whole point of getting reward? He said the whole point of getting reward, even though you don't deserve it, is because God does chesed. God does acts of loving kindness. The reality is you don't deserve spit. My language. You don't deserve it because that's what you're created to do. And if that's what you're created to do, you don't deserve reward. You should be whistling Dixie just so you're able to do it. And it has such meaning. Right? But the only reason God gives you reward and you don't deserve it is one very simple reason. Because he's an ish chesed. I shouldn't say he's an ish. Right? He does chesed. He does acts of loving kindness with us. That's the only reason. Now, when I saw this, I saw this made a lot of sense, right? Because you would think, of course, person learns Torah, person does mitzvahs, should get reward, right? But then you get the problem with the Mishnah, right? The Mishnah says, but that's what you're created to do. So why should I give you reward? So comes along, duties of the heart, and he says you should get reward. You know why? Not because you deserve it, only because I'm going to give it to you because I'm in a nice mood. I'm generous. I'm going to give you reward even though you don't deserve it because that's your obligation to serve me. Right? So we've learned, yeah, go ahead.
So really, you're getting to the whole point is that we should do good because it's the right thing to do, and we should learn to do good in order to do good.
It's only the right thing to do because God said it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, so we do what's right because it's right.
Right, because someone will say, well, how do I know, what's universal? Maybe being a masochist is universal. Maybe this is being universal. No, it's only universal according to what the Torah says, not what I think. I would think there are certain things that are universal. One example about speaking Lashon Hara, right? We mentioned many times that even for a Noahide, even things that are not obligated, they're not obligated to do because it's a Noahide law, but because it's a moral imperative. That's an SAT word. Moral imperative. It's an amazing thing that even though I'm not obligated to do it, it's still good. It's still good for me to do, even if I'm not obligated. Right? So something that's universal and something that's gonna, get me up in the morning, whatever, I'm gonna do what God wants me to do. Now, obviously, you gotta believe it's right? So for a non-Jew, it's a lot easier because many things that a non-Jew is going to have to keep make sense, right? They certainly make sense according to everyone. And probably 80% of what Jews keep make no sense. They absolutely make zero sense. We have to try and understand it. But a lot of it without oral law is incomprehensible, right? Major incomprehensible. So we have to work very hard. And part of my job to re-squeegee, someone told me I should actually make that a new word, re-squeegee the brain, right? What it means to be a Jew, what it means to be a non-Jew in doing the right thing in God's eyes. Not what I think, right? Even if I understand, not to steal or not to cheat on my taxes is forbidden, I'm only going to keep it I should have fear of God. I don't want to get caught. I don't want to get caught by the authorities, right, as well. But I'm going to do it because it's what God wants from me. Right? I'd love to eat pork, but what can I do? It probably tastes very good, but my Father in heaven says I can't do it. And I'm not allowed. Right? I'm not allowed to do it. So therefore, we should go beyond the letter of the law. I just heard, actually, I read a story about somebody in Brooklyn, New York, where they shut down all the synagogues. And people wanted to pray, let's say, in their backyards. Or let's say in their apartment buildings and balconies or whatever. So he said, someone asked him about it, and he said, no. Why not? Because he had an awareness for non-Jews as well. He says, non-Jews are going to see people out there. It's going to be a desecration of God's name. Now, even though we throw that term around a lot, desecration of God's name, it's got a specific definition. If it's done in front of 10 Jews, one of my kids asked me this today. They said, but that's not what a desecration of God's name is. I said, you're right. Right? But it's still not good because they're going to see, like, oh, you're out there praying, whether they believe in it, they don't believe it, doesn't matter. But you're out there, you could be spreading the virus. So therefore, you nip it in the bud, you don't even do that. Right? You don't even do that. So, maybe you have, Jews or non-Jews sitting on the balcony playing music or whatever. You say, well, isn't that bad? They want to entertain people. So again, if we're not allowed to do it because of the way it looks, right? So they want to do it's one thing, but a Jew's got a bigger obligation, right? In other words, we're all responsible one for another. So if one person, either they're totally misguided, and they hate Jews or whatever, and one person comes along and says, oh, you're spreading this whatever. So I'm not going to say under all circumstances, doesn't care what people necessarily say, but the question is what vibes we give off. And if we give off bad vibes, even though it's really not forbidden, the way they're going to look at it, right, maybe a person shouldn't do it. Now, if it's something obviously we have an obligation to do, then we don't care what they say. right? Then doesn't really matter what they say. This is our obligation to God. Let them say what they want. But if it's something where someone could look at it, I give one example. There was somebody, went to somebody bought a shirt, I think, or a blouse. No, it was a shirt or whatever, and it had it had gold embroidery. They sold it for more money. So it was a Jew who did this, right? Sold it for more money. So a person bought it. What happened? First time in the wash, gonzo. Comes off, right? So the king begs, how could you sell it like this? You sold it for more money. And you ripped me off, right? They want their money back. You ripped me off. Now this is a Jew. These are two Jews. One's an Orthodox Jew, unfortunately, who did this. So the secular Jew says, how could you do that? You ripped me off. You're a thief. So what was his answer? And you should never, ever answer this. His answer was, who told you to put Orthodox Jews on such a high pedestal? You got your hand caught in the cookie jar. You don't say, okay, my hand was caught. You're right, you got me. Kind of answer. That's not going to bring Jews closer to Torah by any stretch. You're going to cause them to hate Torah more. Right? How I don't even see my wildest dreams you can say such a thing. You got to admit you did something wrong. Tell me I shouldn't be put on a higher pedestal. We, the Orthodox Jews, we're the ones who represent Torah, whether we like it or not. And when you go outside and you do something wrong, you cut someone off or whatever, they're going to say all Jews, not just Orthodox Jews. They're going to say all Jews. There's been talk about people didn't hold according to protocol. Right? And they made themselves look bad. They made all the Jews look bad. So, so someone went in to get something done for a car or something. They said, we're not serving you. You're the one spreading this. They threw them out. Now, okay, anti-Semite, whatever. But if a few people do something wrong and, they're Orthodox Jews, it's 10 times worse. Secular Jew does it, okay, it's one thing, right? Because they're not beholden to Torah mitzvahs. They're not going to be, they'll be held to a higher pedestal also as a Jew. Doesn't matter, secular Jew, not secular Jew. Someone who represents the Torah. And someone who represents what the Torah is, at a relatively high level or even a normal level. You cut someone off on the road, they see you're an Orthodox Jew. You say, no, sorry, I'm in a rush. My wife's about to give birth. Whatever, right? But you cut somebody off, that's not the case. If that's not the case, what are they going to think? Now, again, they could say, oh, all Jews this, all Jews that. But why does it work like that? We don't say like that about Italians. We don't say that about Canadians. We don't say that about whoever. Right? Some people may say it against blacks, but that's being racist. Right? But why is it said about Jews we mentioned before? All Jews are responsible one for the other. And it doesn't make sense otherwise. We're all responsible. So therefore, if we do something wrong, an Orthodox Jew do something wrong, that's it. Across the board, we'll say Jews this, Jews that. And that's why so many secular Jews during the Holocaust couldn't understand why Hitler's taking them, even if they had one family member. The father was Jewish, it means they weren't really Jewish. Hitler said, doesn't matter. I'm taking everybody. He said, but, I fought in your wars. I went to universities. I even went to your art exhibits. Hitler, your mach shemoy v'zichro, may his name be blotted out, may he rot. He didn't care. Absolutely didn't care. But what did they want to say? We're just like you. And God says, you know what? I'm going to make a point over here. And the point is, if you're born a Jew, you're a Jew. It doesn't matter. You keep it, you don't keep it. I'm always going to remind the Jewish people that they're Jews. And it's something they can never forget. So I'll tell you the last story that Reb Tauber, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, may his name be blessed. Again, one of the Torah giants of the last generation. He was a child. He was a child in the camps during the war. And he saw someone come in. I think I told the story before, but it's a good story. So a guy comes in, 50, 60 years old, comes in, pulling out his hair, going crazy. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. This is the end of the war, 1945. 44, 1945, whatever it was, the end of the war. So they calmed it down and said, what happened? So he was married to an non-Jew, lived outside the ghetto. And one night they had a meeting. And they said, Dad, Grandpa, you're a Jew. It's like, no, come on, I'm just like everyone else, this, that. Whatever. Imagine being married 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it is. And they turned him in. Now, you have to understand, this is the end of the war. So Rav Talbot said, what do you think? They need another bar of soap? They need to make this guy into a bar of soap? So Rav Talbot was talking to college students. He said, God's knocking on the door. And God said, and he was a kid at the time, and he said God wanted to make sure no one forgot that they were a Jew. This guy might have lived his life like a non-Jew. 100% of the time. Married a non-Jew, non-Jewish kids, did everything like non-Jews, not a question. God says, I'm going to make sure no one ever forgets. Because this story shows beyond the shadow of a doubt, this is the end of the war. Why did God have to make this person an example at the end of the war? There's no reason. Makes no sense. After all this time, all these Jews being rounded up at the end of the war, at the very end of the war, they turn them in. So Rabbi Talbot says, yeah, that's God's knocking on the door saying that I'm never going to let you forget that you're a Jew.
There you go.
Because it made no sense. It made no sense otherwise. Absolutely no sense. So a Jew can run, a Jew can hide, right? But if, God wants to make a point, then you can hide as much as you want. He knows, right? And he's going to make it happen. And this is an unbelievable story. It's an unbelievable story that, every Jew out there, has to know you're born with a precious soul. And as much as you want to run away, it's always going to come back to haunt you one way or another. And God can make it that you will never forget. You will never live it down, no matter how much you want to run away. It's going to, maybe if it's not in this world, certainly it'll be in the next if you have anything left of you. But it's a very, very powerful thing, right? That a person can never forget their roots. And if you want to forget your roots, God forbid, God's going to say no. I'm going to make sure you never forget. I'm going to do that.
Well, Rabbi, even for the rest of the 70 nations, those people all over the world, with this COVID-19, this coronavirus, we got to wake up and say to ourselves, we can't forget that we're human beings, fashioned in the image of God, and that we have purpose and we have a role to play, and this is killing people everywhere. The numbers that are projected for the next month, especially here in the United States and a few other hot spots. People need to wake up and say, hey, Teshuvah is a real thing. We should, people repent, turn, and listen and plug into Torah and get the message. These 7 universal laws, the Sheva Mitzvot, are for everyone. They're universal, and I think people need to grasp that there are essential elements, but I think you touched on today a lot of the, as you said, the moral imperatives. Universal things. People need to focus and say, hey, I could be doing things. We could look at this as a reboot and then, come out like gangbusters and really build.
Just don't cut people off the road. Just drive normal. These are basic things. You go into a supermarket. Who says you have to push someone because you want tomatoes, or you want, you're going to go for those eggs. You're going to run after those eggs. It's crazy. It's crazy. These are basic, these are basic things. We're not talking about Kabbalistic intention. We're not talking about Kabbalah. We're talking about what it means to be a mensch, right? To do the right thing and to do it in the right way. Even if you're not obligated, it's a moral imperative. And a person, especially in Noahide, has to ask themselves the question, is what I'm doing now, is it good for me? Is it good for my soul or not? Now you can tell me this is not part of the Noahide laws, whatever it is. Let's say Lashon Hara, we use that as an example. Should I be speaking about others and backbiting? Is that a good thing for me? You say, well, that's the way of the world. You're right. That wasn't my question. My question was, is that good?
Yeah,
does that help me? Does that help me? Does it make me a better person? And if you have a doubt, then you shouldn't do it, right? Someone's going to say, yeah, cutting people off makes me a better person. Okay. but the reality...
I think that ties in with your Mishna today about the government, people think of, filibusters and things that go on in governments where there's all backbiting against each other, trying to push their party's agenda over another. I mean, there's a lot of lashon hara in that, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Politics in general, I mean, especially here, 100%. I mean, here's not different than anywhere else, but it's, yeah. No, 100%. And people will say, no, I'm justified in saying this and I'm justified in saying that. There's specific laws when I'm allowed to say something, when I'm not allowed to, right? There are certain conditions that a person has to fulfill, right? So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you think or, whatever the case is. Is it good for me? Is it something that benefits me? That's the question.
Well, Rabbi, I think you've done a wonderful job today. I was thinking,
hey, we finished the Mishna.
You did. I was thinking we might get a touch on Mishna 11, but maybe we'll save that for the next time. Now, we did get a few of our visitors from Germany today, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
And they've been talking up a storm in the YouTube chat room, but I really think you touched on some beautiful stuff. Finished this off with a powerful message and messages that are applicable to everybody out there. Please pay attention to what is a moral imperative. Think about it, especially during this time, especially if you're in a grocery store. Don't be greedy. Be kind. Think about what is healthy for society as a whole. This too shall pass.
To tell one other story I was telling you before. Someone went into a store. Now they have a limit on eggs, how many eggs you can take. Now it's one of the main staples of Passover. It's matzah, potatoes. They don't have a problem with matzah or potatoes. Plenty of both, and eggs, right? So we're trying to think of like different things you can make with with the minimal amount of eggs and whatever. We got eggs the other day, right? But someone was in the store, was only told they could take 2 cartons. And this person got so upset because of all the pressure and whatever. He started taking the eggs and throwing it at the person behind the the cashier. Started throwing eggs at them over the store, whatever. Okay, person lost it. Right? Person totally lost it. They said, I need more eggs and whatever. And, obviously that's not going to bring anyone closer to God. I can understand the frustration, right? But who gives you a right to throw eggs at, this poor cashier? Okay, maybe they weren't quick enough or maybe this. Okay, so maybe throw a couple eggs. But to throw it's crazy, right? That, what's going to happen to that person, after 120 years? I mean, that's insane. Okay, I understand you need eggs. We all need eggs, right? There's a shortage, especially during their time.
Yeah,
but good.
We're in a similar boat, Rabbi, except here our cashiers now have plexiglass, so no people can cough on them. So the eggs are just.
So what are the things happened here that we're supposed to get eggs from Spain, and because of what's going on in Spain, they send it back, right? So I don't know. They're getting from other places, whatever it is. But whatever, it's gonna be somewhat of a shortage. So okay, so you have enough for a certain amount of time, hopefully, and then they're gonna get more eggs. It's not like they're never gonna be any eggs, right? So just actually, I mentioned to my wife, she's like, yeah, probably good through next Shabbos. So after that, we'll have to, hopefully during the week, beginning of the week, we'll get a few more things of eggs. Whatever. I mean, eventually it's gonna pass, but that's like, okay, we'll make do. You'll make do. But at the end of the day. That is, God does not want you throwing eggs at the cashier. I don't, care what the cashier said or did or whatever, but it has nothing to do with anything. He said you're only allowed to take 2.
Especially right? To waste the product.
Also, right? Certainly not permitted, right? This was a Jew, not a non-Jew. I mean, still obligated, but what? I understand the frustration, but for goodness sakes, you gotta have your mind on, Problem is you gotta pay attention to everything you do. Right, how you interact with others, what you say, how you say it, especially family-wise, and all that. You just got to be careful what you do. This just shows the person just totally lost it. Right now, it can be any number of things what the person's going through, but at the end of the day, you know what? God says, I don't really care. Or they say in Boston, who cares? Right? He doesn't care. Because he said, okay, I put you in the situation. I squeezed you a little bit. Now you can only take 2 things of eggs. You got a big family. Okay. So you got to deal with it. But the evil inclination says, yeah, got another one. Yeah. I just smashed this guy. And this guy's going to have to pay. Right? He's going to have to pay a serious price.
Well, there you have it, folks. Don't let your evil inclination get the better of you there. and take the lesson that the rabbi shared today. This has been a wonderful class. I hope that folks out there feel free to share it off the YouTube channel, good HD quality. We do our best to try to make sure that you're getting good quality, but I know that Rabbi Coffman is making sure that we're getting the real deal when it comes to Torah. And Rabbi, we want to thank you for that. Have you got any closing words, Rabbi?
Have I got any closing words? Person has to realize, as you mentioned, what's going on in the world, etc. I'm still not convinced hundreds of millions are going to die. And again, I could be wrong. It could be tens of thousands, could be 100,000, few 100,000, could be, right? Very well could be, But again, imagine, start playing my guitar and singing Kumbaya. We should all just love each other. Kumbaya. That's the message here. If we're not allowed to be around other people, when we're around other people, we have to act in a proper way, right? That's what we have to do. In the message we mentioned before, and I'll mention again, the fact that people are in lockdown and can't really go out that much, and all that, it's going to be introspective, right? It's, people are dying, and it's not just affecting older people. Older people, the majority, they're going to die from this. But this virus is taking younger people, right? Last week, 39-year-old, from New York died, no previous health issues, 2 days. 2 days he died, right? So that means that if God wants to take you, he'll take you. It doesn't matter. You could be totally healthy. This thing could knock you out, right? So we have an obligation to adhere to these rules to make sure no one else, other people don't get sick.
Moral imperative.
Moral imperative, but a person has to take to heart, right? We're going to be in lockdown for a while, right? A person has to take heart what is going on here, right? And how many people are going to go by the wayside, and God forbid, and all that. That means we have to wake up. I was just reading something, as my Rabbi pointed out. He said this is the time for massive tshuva, massive amount of repentance. That's what God wants. He wants change, and he wants major change. And even if we don't think we're capable of it, well, guess what? You got to work on it. Because if you don't work on it, this thing could be 10 times worse. And now what they're saying is, even if we get through the summer, and it gets, controlled or whatever, go back to normal, this thing can come back in the winter. God forbid. Right? That's what whether it's true, right? Whether it's true, whether it's not true, it might be better because, have more antibodies, and, maybe they'll find a vaccine, but someone told me it'd take a year to get a vaccine. Whatever the case is, this is something mega that's making us all think. It doesn't distinguish. It doesn't discriminate over here. And, if a person has to be careful. One of the things, a person can help fight, they tell you, take zinc and vitamin D and vitamin C and all that. But one of the other things is keeping the body giving the body rest, right? Because, if you have my schedule, you don't rest that much. So I slept a lot today. Right, but you have to, the Rambam says, and others echo the same thing. There's a mitzvah to guard the body, right? So you got to take care of the body, take care of the soul, right? But one of the things against, again, to try and do this, is a person needs to try and get rest, because if a person's overtired, you max out the body, you're susceptible, right? You can be susceptible when the body's weaker. Doesn't matter what age. If the body's weaker at any level, and a person gets something, it's it could be fatal. Right? Certain things could certainly be fatal. So we have to guard ourselves, and the thing here is we have to want to change. Not just because God's throwing this at us, right? It's always better to want to change when everything's good. But now the fact that we have this thing, and it's out there, so God's saying, okay, now I'm not giving you any choice. Now you have to pray in your own house. Now you can't be around other people. So you have to do, what you need to do in order to be better. Right? That's the message.
Beautiful. Well said, Rabbi. So with Passover coming, are we still going to tentatively aim for next week?
Next Saturday night, we should be good. I don't see... well, I can't go anywhere. So anyway, it's after it'll be after Shabbos, and even though it's Passover, so still they're not letting anyone go anywhere, and it wouldn't matter anyway because it's nighttime for me. So yeah,
Are you are you still
it's
doing nine classes a week, Rabbi, or
I'll,
more?
I'll be about 8 classes a week, but obviously next week, I have class on Sunday, of whatever 3-4 classes on Sunday, class Monday we'll do Tanakh talk on Monday, and up until Wednesday night. Wednesday night is Passover. So Wednesday night will be the Seder for Passover. Everyone outside of Israel will be Thursday night as well, and then we have Shabbos. Right, then Shabbos comes in. So whatever. So those my end of the week classes I won't have, but before Wednesday I'll certainly have classes, and then Saturday night, as long as I'm prepared, which I should be, so then that shouldn't be that shouldn't be an issue.
Well, I hope you get some rest, like you've just told all of us today. You look good today. You can see you got good skin color. I hope you feel well, and we pray for all of Israel that the light continue to shine out of Israel. And I want to thank you for today's lesson. So we're definitely on for next Saturday.
Yeah, we should be on. I don't see any problem.
All right. Well, folks, you heard it. I hope you enjoyed the class. So until then, everybody stay safe and be kind when you do get out to those around you. Let's make this world a better place, and I know you guys can help. So until next time, this is Dan and Rabbi Coffman saying shalom.